Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to make some rubber stamps. As always, guys, I just want to step in here quickly and give you a little bit of a warning. This is a laser-based show, so there will be flashing lights from the laser in operation. And if you are somebody who is affected by those flashing lights, please be warned. It will be in today's show, and do whatever you have to do to protect yourself. Stay safe, guys. Well, full disclosure, I have never tried this before, so I have no idea how it's going to work out. I have no idea of the settings of the laser. I have no idea about any of it. I'm just going to experiment today and take you along for the ride, and hopefully at the end of it, we're going to have some workable rubber stamps and have a little bit of fun along the way. So the idea was to make some rubber stamps for my granddaughter so that it would, assist her in her arts and crafts. She could add little stamping embellishments and that sort of thing. And the hunt was on from there to find the material to make the rubber stamps from. So that is where we're going to start, with the material that I got for this particular project. Well, finding the rubber for the rubber stamps is not difficult. It's all over the internet. It's just a thin layer of rubber that's backed onto some kind of neoprene backer or something. I'm not sure what that is. Where the problem lies is finding a rubber stamp material that is safe to use with lasers. Now, most of these are meant to be carved with knives or that sort of thing to make your rubber stamps. But this one here claims that it is fine and safe for laser use. Now, regardless of what they say, we're still going to have full ventilation with the laser in an enclosure to vent out any fumes that may occur. But either way, I got this stuff on Amazon. I'll post the link down below. And this is the material that we're going to use. So I have no idea what the settings are going to be for this. We're going to try a couple and see what happens. I don't want to waste this material, so I'm not going to do a test grid. This stuff is fairly expensive. It's about $16 a sheet, but depending on how many stamps you get out of it, the savings on purchasing stamps is huge. So why don't we start by looking at the design? So I've made what I thought will be a usable rubber stamp file in Lightburn, and we'll just open that up. And what I've got here is essentially my Cut Above Woodworkings stamp. And what I want to do is, before I do anything, I want to test this on a piece of wood. I want to engrave it. The reason being is that what you need is for this to be in negative. If you just engrave it normally, all of this background here, that will all be your stamp, and your engraved letters will be recessed on the rubber, so that will not end up taking any ink from the stamp pad. So you need to do this in a negative or inverted state. So if I come up here and I click on our preview, it shows me that this is in fact in a negative state, where you can see down here the black lines are cuts, the red lines are moves between cuts. Now the red lines you would only see if you have traversal moves clicked as being on. There you go, there's all those red right there, and as it goes through the engraving you can see the red line as it goes. However, we don't want that. I don't care about traversal moves. What I do care about is how it looks in the end. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that it's a rubber stamp. In other words, you need to engrave it or carve it in reverse if you have any kind of letterings or image that makes a difference to the way it stamps. If you just do this normally, and by normally I mean looking normal, let me just arrange it here. We can flip this whole image horizontally, and there we can see that the Cut Above Woodworkings looks normal. If you engrave it like this, that's just fantastic. It'll look wonderful on the rubber, but as soon as you stamp it, it will be reversed. We don't want that. So what we need to do is we need to come up here, click Arrange, and flip it horizontally, and that will reverse our letters to make it proper. So let me get a scrap piece of wood and we are going to run this through and engrave it and see how it looks on our scrap wood. Now, as with any project, the very first thing you want to do is you want to frame your project to make sure it's within the parameters of where your wood is. Mine is not. So it's very easy to just shift this over to our starting point, just like that. All right, and we will frame it again. And now that I'm happy with that, we will do our test burn on this. It's just a scrap piece of maple. Well, let's take this over to the bench and have a look at it, because I think I see a problem right away. Well, the one thing that I'm glad to see is, number one, that the lettering is in fact reversed, so that will work really well as far as a stamp goes. The biggest problem that I see here right now with this stamp is on my stamp itself, this bottom half is a piece of wood with wood grain, and this top half is a saw blade. Now I can see that this is in fact raised. However, it's also very charred from our engraving, which kind of tells me that if it's charring here, then it's too fine of a detail. And if the engraver is going to hit the rubber there with that, this is going to reduce the height of the rubber at this saw blade and at the wood grain here. The major check marks on this piece of wood at the bottom have remained intact. However, the wood grain is gone. So that just says that that isn't going to stamp very well at all. So, I mean, why am I going to waste my time here? So doing this test serves a couple purposes. It serves a test to make sure that it looks right and that your stamp is going to work. Basically, anything that wasn't engraved here will be your stamp. And it also shows whether or not your pattern is a little too intricate. And in this case, I really think it is. So I'm going to change this design. I think what I'm going to do is I will just make it the lettering and the outside border. And I'll do another test burn and we'll see how that works out. Well, we can see some of the changes that I've made here. One is removing this saw blade from the top, the other one down here, removing the wood. I have also made a different font, made it a little more bold, a little more, well, you know what? A beefier letter, because I wanted something that would be very easily engravable for a stamp. And I've done a test engraving, and this is what I've come up with. And I really like it, except I don't like how wide this border is here at the top and the bottom. That to me is just wasting material. So I will be shrinking this down. So I guess what we can do at this point, knowing that this engraves properly, I guess what we can do is do a test engraving on the rubber. Well, not knowing the settings, but having some experience with engraving other materials, I'm going to say that this 200 speed is probably a good place to start. That's pretty quick for an engraving, but it is rubber. But this 65 of our maximum power, I think that is a little on the heavy side. So I'm going to drop that right down to 30% power and just one pass. I mean, I could always engrave it deeper with multiple passes if I want, but I don't want to fry the material. So let's try this and see how we make out. So we'll just click OK. We will come over here into laser. We're going to frame our project. And once we're done with the framing, we can just come over here and click start. Okay, well, looking at this, it's just not deep enough. It did start to engrave it, but it's not deep, and also it's crooked on my rubber. This corner here is factory cut as a rounded corner. I didn't allow for that, so I've lost the corner of my stamp. But I'm not going to move this. I'm going to keep it where it is. to test another setting. That way I'm not wasting a second piece. I'll just keep engraving over top of this. So I did this at a 30%. Let's put this up to 50% power and the same setting at 200, and we'll burn it again. That is still not as deep as I would like. So you know what? We're gonna throw caution to the wind. I'm gonna hit this at 100% power, the same speed, and I think I'm gonna do 2 passes. And it'll either work really well or it'll completely destroy the project. So let's see how we make out with that. Okay, let's pull this out. And let's take it over to the bench and see what we ended up with. Well, it's kind of hard to see what we ended up with here because there is so much, I don't know if that's soot or burnt material or what it is. So I'm just going to get an old toothbrush here. And we're going to get in here and brush this a little bit just to try to clean it out. There we go. And you know what? Even with that corner, initially I thought I had lost this corner, but no, I just caught it. So that actually worked out well. I didn't waste this at all. So I'm glad that I decided to continue burning this to try to get it to work. All right, so let me get a piece of paper towel. We'll dab the excess water. And you know what? That looks great. I think we have it deep enough. It looks good. It looks clean. So the next thing that I want to do now is I want to cut this square out of here. Now, I could have done it on the laser, but honestly, I don't know what this backing paper here is made of. So I really don't want to cut it just in case. No one ever said it was safe to cut this with a diode laser. So I'm going to err on the side of caution here and just not cut it. So we're going to cut it with an X-Acto knife, and we're going to cut it in our waist area right in through this line here. And with that, we have our business end, or our rubber, of our stamp. And I now have a small block of scrap maple. This is 3/4 of an inch thick, and the rest of the dimensions coincide with the stamp. So 5/8 of an inch wide and 3 inches long. And what I'm going to do is, on our Lightburn program, I want to change our program or our engraving, because what I want to do is, on our maple blank, I want to engrave what the stamp will look like. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to turn this thing around so the lettering is right. So we can just click arrange and then flip horizontally. All right, there is one issue solved. But now if we look at what it looks like, this is not what our stamp will look like. This is actually the negative of it. We don't want that. So what we can do here, the way I got it to go negative, is that I put an external border around this and told it to fill everything else in. So if I eliminate that outer border, we'll just delete it. There we go. And now if we look at our preview, it now looks like what our stamp will look like. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to place our maple back into our laser. Don't forget to change your settings here, guys, because 200 at 100% power and 2 passes is way too much for this maple. So we're going to drop it down to 1 pass. We're going to put this at 120 millimeters per second, and I'm going to drop the power down to 65%. That should be plenty to give us a good burning on our maple block. So let's get this maple block placed in the engraver. We will frame it up and engrave it, and I'll show you what it looks like. And with that, we have our stamp now engraved on the top of our wood block to show us what it is that we're stamping and the orientation of it. So we now want to flip this over, and we want to adhere our rubber stamp onto the back of our block. So I'm going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. We're going to glue this to the back of our stamp, let it completely set up, and then I guess all we need to do at that point is test it out. Okay, and when it's all said and done, there is our stamp. Look at that. That looks fantastic. I got a little bit of squeeze out there from the 5-minute epoxy, but I'm not going to be too concerned about it. I'm just going to take our toothbrush. I see a little bit of sawdust in there. I'm going to clean that out just to make sure that we've got a clean stamping image to start off with. Now, I don't know how it's going to stamp right off the bat because it's new. So I don't know if this is working or not, but maybe just a little more ink like that. As the stamp is getting inked, look at that. That is awesome. Wow, now that works better than I ever thought it ever would. That is amazing. Very clean, very sharp image on the stamp. And of course, it took a while to get the stamp inked up from the beginning because it's new, but that looks great. Guys, the possibilities on this are just endless. Well, I had so much fun with the Cut Above Woodworking stamp and playing around with it, and I enjoyed the process, and I was so pleased with the results that I made this. Just a little small turning of a knob on the lathe off of a scrap piece of maple. I engraved a happy face here on the top because on the bottom we have a happy face here. I haven't tried this one yet, but we're going to give it a try. Ink it up. Guys, look at that. That is absolutely spectacular. Oh my gosh, my granddaughter's gonna love it. All right. So there you go, guys. This one actually, to make up the pattern, took me about 5 minutes. It was about a 5-minute turning of this little chunk of wood. It probably took longer for the epoxy to dry to hold the rubber in place than what it did for me to engrave and make this darn thing. But oh my gosh, that is phenomenal. And there you have it. Custom rubber stamps. Guys, these are absolutely awesome. I am blown away by, number one, how easy this was. Number two, I didn't waste any material at all. Number three, the quality of the stamp. The stamp is so perfect. It's not even that kind of blotchy stamp that you normally get. It is bang on the money, really crisp, really clean, and a great looking stamp. Guys, the possibilities for this are absolutely endless. It is right off the charts. You got somebody in your family that loves scrapbooking and making their own Christmas, birthday, holiday cards, whatever. Custom stamps. Guys, custom stamps. I don't know how much more to say it. Like, it took nothing to make this stamp. A piece of the rubber sheet, 5/8 of an inch wide, 3 inches long. That was all that I used. There was zero waste. A little block of scrap maple that was, well, scrap. Scrap. And you get this stamp. Now, out of curiosity, I went online and I Googled prices for custom stamps here in Canada. And I didn't pick and choose. I didn't go through finding the most expensive price or whatever. I went in, the first one I saw, I just clicked on it and I found their pricing list for a custom stamp with 1 line of lettering, just like we did here today, 3 inches long, just like we did today, but only 1/2 an inch wide. Ours was 5/8 of an inch. And the price was $14.80 plus tax, so plus another 13% on top of that here in Canada, plus shipping on top of that. So you're looking at $20 for one little stamp like what we made here today. What did I pay? $16 for the whole sheet of rubber, and I could probably get 80 of these stamps out of it. Guys, this is a win-win situation. If you have anyone who is in the need for rubber stamps, for the price of $16 for that sheet of rubber, you can easily make them their own. I'm thinking an entire set of alphabet letters with smiley faces, emoticons, all kinds of stuff here to be able to put into a gift box for my granddaughter to be stamping away on pieces of paper and make her own little collages of stamps for 16 bucks. Guys, this is incredible. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. The final settings that I had on this in order to get this to work was I went with 200 millimeters per second, 100% power, and 2 passes, and that gave me the best results. The stamp works and looks great, and there's just enough of a depth to that engraving to be able to give you a good clean stamp. But I mean, if you want to go more, you can go more if you like. You just don't want to go too deep and make the raised lettering brittle or kind of unsecure. You need it supported, otherwise it just starts to fall apart on you. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click that bell and then you're not going to miss the future notifications of the program. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you've enjoyed the project. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I really hope you're going to try this for yourself because this was a load of fun. I really enjoyed this show. And more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.